Hello, my lovelies. Thanks so much for joining me, and welcome back to part two of our Scrumptious Autumn Fruits. Rather late for this, as we're well into December now. But anyway, there we are. Hopefully next year I'll catch up with myself and get a little bit more ahead of myself with the seasons. But I did want to finish this painting because I really was enjoying it. I had so much fun sort of creating the bokeh background and things. Now, it's at this stage in the painting, obviously you're pretty much set up, you're good to go, really, and it's totally up to you, as I always say to you, how far you want to take it, how refined you want to take it. Basically, once you've got your basic values set up, that really is the springboard for you then to take it, where you want. Basically making something more refined and sort of a little bit more realistic. All you're doing is breaking down the shapes even further. Obviously you start with big simple shapes, in your colours and your levels of light and dark. And, as I say, the more realistic you want it to look, basically you're breaking down those shapes more and more and more. And basically it's a question of going backwards and forwards. The more you break it down, the more realistic it's going to appear. Now in this one, obviously I'm having a play with my Canson Mi Tentes on the black velvet, charcoal velvet, I think it was called. Can't remember now. But anyway, the black paper, which is really lovely. I'm really enjoying it. And obviously I've only used this paper once before, so I did want to give it a little test. And I thought, well, actually this little painting, even though it's only little, it gives me a good opportunity to really test this paper out, and see how detailed I can get. I'm probably not going to take it all the way to the end, but I want to get a good level of detail on there. So basically, what I'm doing is literally, as I say, going backwards and forwards and starting to break down those shapes more. Now we've got that, now we've got that base in. What I want to do is start bringing some of those juicy fruits forward in the painting. So I'm going to start putting a little bit of detail on there. And at this stage, as I say, I'm not absolutely sure how much I'm going to put. And it really, just depends how the painting goes. Obviously at this point, as I'm doing the audio, I know how it went and I know how detailed I did get. But at this stage, I wasn't quite sure. So, and also, as I say, I wanted to test that paper, so I want to see how many layers it can take, before it starts to kind of clog up and things. So I was quite happy, building up the layers as I often do. So as I say, what I'm doing is I'm starting to look at those sort of fruits that are towards the front now and giving those a little bit more detail, starting to look a little bit closer at those levels of light and dark, starting to bring out some of the little individual berries, on the fruit and things. And I'm doing that by literally looking at my reference photo, still squinting, and just starting to create some sort of berry-like shapes. Now, I'm not absolutely fussed whether all these, whether I've got every single berry in and things like that. The only ones that I probably will take more time on, or I do take more time on, are the ones that are really in the foreground, that big juicy one that's ready to pick in the middle there. I want to make sure that that's got a little, a good level of detail on. And basically, the closer something is to you, the more detail there is, really, or the more detail that you can see. And what we want to do, obviously, is push that background to the back, so that these berries are literally coming right to us, ready to pick. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going to be putting a little bit more detail on these berries, and then I'm literally going to be going between the berries and the background, and just starting to pull some things forward, push some things back. Now I'm going to speed up this video because obviously it does take me quite a while. I'll slow down, I'll keep it slow also the time I'm sort of doing details on the berries and things, but for the background I think it's probably easier for you to watch as well when it's actually going fast, so you can actually actually see what I'm doing. So I'm going to pop the music on. I'm not going to talk too much, because I think it's quite clear what I'm doing, just literally going backwards and forwards, pulling out a little bit more detail every time and trying to, get the balance of things. But I'll pop in, once if I start doing something special or whatever, I'll pop in and slow the video back down and talk you through what I'm doing. All right then, but in the meantime, I'll pop that music on and happy painting or happy watching. See you in a mo. So hopefully you can see how I'm starting to sort of break things down by using just the use of colour and sort of like reducing those shapes a little bit more. Now I'm slowing the video back down a little bit because I want to show you sort of like how I'm creating this blackberry. Now it's good. This one's a good example. So I've slowed down before I thought I would. But you can see what I'm doing is obviously I've got that basic shape there that I've done. And I'm now coming in with that gorgeous purple. Oh, it's such a lush colour. And starting to create berry shapes, sort of on the black there, starting to look at where those little berries are starting to form. And as I say, starting off with the purple, and then I'm going to be looking again, and then I'm going to be introducing that lovely electric blue where it's really brighter. So here I come now. So coming in with that electric blue, and just catching the edges, trying to look at my reference photo and seeing the shapes. How is that light hitting that blackberry? As I say, I'm not hugely fussed if it's not exactly right, but I do want to give the feel. So I am starting to break down those shapes and look at the smaller shapes within the big shapes, which is what I do in the background as well. You might have seen on the lighter area where the light really is bright at the background. Within that lighter area, we gave ourselves a general guide, but within that lighter area, there are lighter patches still. There's the smaller shapes, the smaller, where it really is really, really bright. So that's what you're doing. You're constantly breaking it down that little bit further. But as I say, I just wanted to slow this bit down, just so that you could see how I'm starting to deal with these berries now. Now I've got a bit of colour down on that. I'm now going back into that that red berry at the back. Popping a little bit more highlights on that. And it's a question of once you put one colour down, depending on what it's next to, will give you the appearance of it, changes the appearance of how light or dark something is. So you're constantly refining and going backwards and forwards, adjusting your levels. You see me there coming in with my little finger. It was a little bit too harsh, and that's not that's not our closest berry to us. So I want to knock that back a little bit. So you just saw me there with my little finger there, just giving it a quick little dab. Again, just to soften something off. So that's what I'm doing. When you see me there with my little finger, I'm just softening something off, just pushing it back a little bit. I might bring it back forward again, but for the time being, it needs, that berry at the back there, for example, needs to go back. And as you can see, coming in with that lighter value now, breaking down that shape at the front, you can see that there's a real glow around that, that centre bit where it really is bright. So looking at those shapes within the shapes and lightening and darkening as I go. All right then, so I'll speed back up and I'll see you in a mo. So slowing the video back down again now, because I'm going to work on that, that very big berry in just a moment. So slowing it down so again you can see what I'm doing. But hopefully you can see it. I've been going backwards and forwards between things, as I say, pulling some things forward, pushing some things back, and I'm doing that by the use of colour. Always remember, cooler colours recede. So in that background, you don't want too many warm colours. You want to be using your blue greens rather than your yellow greens. Every now and again you've got kind of a hint of a little yellowy bit, but in general, your greens and your they're all blue greens and purples and things like that, because cooler colours recede. If we were to make everything to the background warm, that would pull that forward. It then would be quite difficult or quite challenging to get those berries to appear towards the front. Now I'm going a little bit redder on my berries than they actually are in the reference photo. They're probably, a little bit more lilac-y in their appearance, but as I say, I really want to bring those forward, so I'm using a little bit more red in there to help me do that, because the warmer the colour, the more it comes forward in the painting. Cooler the colour, the further back it goes, and obviously we want to push our background back, so use all those nice cool greens and blues and the purples and things back there. Now coming in now, you can see now I'm coming in with my very darkest value. This is an absolute jet black, and using it there, and you can see the difference as soon as I put this down. It's a soft pastel. It's a Sennelier. I'm going between a Sennelier and a new pastel actually, to help me with the shapes and things. But you can see when I use the Sennelier just how black it is. You kind of thought that berry was black beforehand, but really once you get those, that's the difference between your soft and your hard pastels. Your soft pastels really do lay down, it's almost pure pigment. The softer the pastel, the less binder it has in it, so therefore you're putting down more pigment as opposed to the binder that goes in it, so it's more concentrated. So bear that in mind. Reserve those strongest, softest pastels if you can, to the end. Certainly if you're applying them in a thicker fashion, you can get away at the background, and you can rub it in and things like that, but you need to keep your touch pretty light. But as soon as you want to start getting some lushness in there, and this will really help that berry sort of feel lush and dark. The contrast is what is always giving you your appearance of 3 dimensions and form, and that's what we want to do. We want to give that feeling, because it really is dark in between some of those areas, and you don't need to go anywhere near as light as you think you might need to on the highlights. You would think perhaps initially, that's very light, but it's not. Comparatively to the background highlight behind it, those highlights are actually low lights, really, aren't they? So be a little bit careful. Don't get you're starting to see me introduce some more lights, and that's it. I'm introducing sort of like another level of light and another level of dark, going, and obviously my black is my absolute darkest. I can't go anywhere from there. So I know that if I get that bit in my very darkest areas, that's really going to help me with that, bringing that forward, because obviously those, as I say, the contrast isn't huge in that berry, but you want to create that form, so you do need your contrast and you do need your lights, but they're nowhere near as light as perhaps you think initially. So take it a little bit steady. This is why you see me going quite slowly and building up in layers. On something like this in particular, because I don't want to commit myself to doing something unless I'm sure the form is closer to how I want it to be. And obviously, if I go in with my heavy pastels and commit to something, then I'm kind of stuck, really. Whilst I can lift some out or whatever, I'm going to get a little bit mucky if I'm not careful. So I always build up. That's why I prefer to build up in layers, sort of slowly. I like to take time building my foundations. So hopefully I'll have a good sturdy house at the end of it. But the foundations, sometimes it can, it's never for me, because I just love to paint, and I don't really care how long it takes me. I really don't. And, I as you know, I can get very involved in a painting. But as I say, for me, that's absolutely fine. I don't care. I'm painting. Doesn't matter how long I'm taking or how slow or how fast is something's going. Art for me is one of those things. It's actually one time in life where you can just stop and just be fully present with what you're doing, and kind of, if you can shut the outside world out for a bit, just have an ear open if you need to pay attention, but otherwise just get absorbed in your painting, and you can get lost for hours, as I frequently do. But so anyway, waffling on, where am I? So anyway, that's basically what I'm doing, going backwards and forwards. I've come up a little bit in the value scale and gone down a little bit in the value scale. All right then, so I'll pop that music back on and I'll see you in a mo. So apologies there for the lighting change. This is how it kind of should be. Unfortunately, that last session there, I think I have my overhead light on. Which amazingly really does affect the way that the light appears on the painting when I'm videoing. So sorry there for a lighting change, but this is kind of more like it is. So if you suddenly go, oh my gosh, she's done a totally different painting and she changed or whatever, I haven't. I've just got my overhead light on, so things are appearing a little bit lighter than they actually were. So sorry about that, and also giving a kind of yellowy glow as well, which doesn't help. Anyway, so there we are. So anyway, as you can see, put in some of those berries now. Now, none of them are the finished article, but I kind of bring it to a stage, all those berries are kind of at the same kind of level. And then, I will go back with fresh eyes. Now, certainly on, as I often do, I always take, plenty of breaks when I'm painting. I think it's so important. So you can step back and, when you come back to your painting, you've got fresh eyes, especially on something that's complex or complicated or whatever. It's very easy to get yourself lost. I mean, thankfully we had a good base there, so hopefully we shouldn't go too far adrift on this one. But also as well, I think your level of concentration sort of dissipates after maybe an hour or so at the easel and things, and so you're not, I find that I end up going backwards and forwards a lot if I end up, I go backwards and forwards plenty anyway. But if I'm at the easel for sort of more than an hour at a time, when I watch the videos back, I can see myself, sort of going back unnecessarily to areas and things. It's just because really I've come to the point that I need a break. I need to just walk away, even if it's just for, go and wash my hands or whatever, which I, again, do very frequently with my pastels. And certainly, I mean, I have seen some pastel artists with the blackest of hands, and I wonder how on earth they can keep their paintings clean. Now, obviously, I'm using a mixture of tools to blend. I'm still blending, and certainly in the background. And as you can see there now, just quick, I don't know whether you saw there, it just came in with a makeup sponge. I'm using different things for different areas. But certainly when I'm using my hands to blend, I make sure that, I use all of my fingers until I've run out of fingers. And if I have got sort of dark on my hair, I've got a little towel at the bottom of my easel, and I'll just wipe off my finger and make sure that I'm not contaminating any areas that I want to remain light with the darks. I mean, it's very difficult with pastels because they do kind of have a mind of their own, and they do shed a little bit of dust and things. So it's easy to get muddy. And so sometimes I'll blend excess pastel in. Other times I'll just sort of waft it off. Really, word of caution: if you do blow on your pastel, and it's so tempting not to, but if you do, make sure you blow and then stand straight back and just let the dust settle before you go back to your easel. I've got one of those air filter purify things next to my easel, and I have that on, and that helps with keeping the dust levels down, because I know some people, I'm lucky, I'm not affected by the dust, but if you are finding you're affected by the dust, do things to help yourself. And certainly if you blow on your, if you blow the pastel dust, off your painting, try and tap it off. It's a little harder for me to do because I have to have my easel at an angle for videoing. So when I tap it, but if you can have it doesn't necessarily fall from the painting. But if you've got your easel upright, which is a better position to paint in, really, especially for pastels, because then you can just tap your board and that pastel dust will just drop down. And everything will be going downwards as opposed to sort of upwards and into your lungs and things. So do that as well. And obviously you see me blending with my fingers, and I get asked the question about the toxicity of the pastels. And basically, yes, they are. Some of the pigments and things, they're not necessarily the best thing to be, and dust in general is not necessarily the best thing to be sort of inhaling into your lungs. So I always, take a little bit of care, and obviously, on your fingers as well. Some artists wear gloves. Others don't. Others never touch their pastel paper, and others, like, some people get really on in there and get very mucky, as I say. But I always make sure that I wash my hands regularly. Every 20 minutes or so, I'll go and, or every half an hour, or every time I take a break, I'll just go and give my hands a quick wash over, so that also as well that my hands aren't sort of excreting too much oil, because obviously in our bodies we secrete oil, don't we? And you don't really want to get too much of that on your pastel painting. So if you are blending with your fingers and you haven't got gloves on, make sure that they're clean before you start. And as I say, I tend to actually, all those hand washes or whatever that we were using in COVID and things, we still have them, a hand sanitizer, and that's got a little bit of alcohol in, and that kind of gets rid of any excess grease and things like that. So I kind of take care. And as I say, I do wash my hands frequently, and I do suggest you do. Obviously, it's not great, pushing that pigment into your skin as such. But I always suggest take sensible precautions, and depending on how you are with regards to dust and things like that, some artists, again, they'll wear a mask as they're painting. Really depends how sensitive you are, but certainly if you're sort of asthmatic or have any problems with your lungs and things, make sure that you do have one of those air purifiers going. Make sure you don't blow on your pastel, and try and keep your workspace clean and tidy so that you haven't got too much dust around and things like that. So just take sensible precautions. I don't often, sorry, I haven't actually, I will do a video all about pastels and things, so that people do know, because obviously you're unaware. But it's like with everything in life, you do take some risks, and it's up to you how you feel about it. But those surgical gloves, I've seen quite a few artists use those, because sometimes the applicators and things and the sponges, it's difficult to get in areas, and also gesturally, there's something about sort of moving that pastel around with your finger, that really you can get gesture in that, and you can use your finger to different pressures and things, sometimes really pushing that pastel in there, other times just tickling it across, and I find my little digits absolutely essential in my art. Some artists don't blend it at all, and it's totally up to you which way you want to go. But personally, I find these little pinkies on the end of my arms, they're really helpful when it comes to blending and things. So anyway, but this is what I'm doing, as you can see, on the background there, just softening it down. But you see me coming in using a variety. If something's not blending with my fingers, as I want it to, usually what I'll do then is basically I haven't quite got enough pastel on there. So at that point I would blend that in with probably a soft tool or things. And as the more pastel gets on there, then I come in with my finger. And as you can see, just my little pinky there, and just as you can see, sometimes in little circular motions, sometimes in sweeping motions, just to get that softness in the background. I want to really break those shapes up. We don't want any hard edges. Everything's out of focus with that lovely bokeh background. So all those edges, the only hard edges we've got are on some of the edges of those blackberries. Other than that, everything else is very soft edge, and you want to make sure you do that. So some blending is essential to be really, I feel, on a painting like this. I'm not sure whether you could. I suppose you could do it with just. I don't know. I don't know. I've never tried not blending on a painting like this. I feel it's important, but only blend in these kind of early stages. Or the early stages. As you progress in the painting, and certainly things that are to the foreground, you want to do less and less blending, because you want those pastels to feel really fresh on the top. But everything that's to the background, obviously you want to push that back, so that does need to be a little bit subtle, a little bit muted, a little bit, all that, creating all of those soft edges. All right then, so I'll pop that music back on, and I'll see you in a mo. So, just wanted to pop in here. For those of you that haven't seen this before, this is, you've noticed I've got a piece of a glassine paper just taped to my board there. Basically, I want to be doing some details at the top of the painting. Now, when I'm working through the painting, if I need to have a lean, I mean, you can use a mile stick. I've never tried one of those actually, but often I'll just rest on my pinky fingernail and things. But this can obviously kind of disrupt your pastels. And I find I have little crescent shapes, which is absolutely fine in the early stages because you can cover those quite easily. But as the painting progresses on something like this, I've gone quite a way in the painting. And now I really kind of want to, in general, work from the top to the bottom. And I want to be getting in close. I've got some fine detail there. Now, this would have been much easier had I done a larger painting, because obviously I'm not trying to get those chunky pastels to go into little tiny spaces, which does mean I do a lot of going backwards and forwards, because it's very difficult with those pastels to get them in exactly where you want them to be, because they're ever changeable art sticks, aren't they? They're not the same brush every time you go back to them. So often I do go back and sometimes I'll create the line by using the negative space around it. Other times I'll draw the line. It really just depends, how it's going. But as I say, that's a piece of glassine paper that I've just taped over. It means that I can rest my sort of heel of my hand on that, and I'm not going to be interfering with anything that goes on underneath. Everything underneath is going to stay exactly as it is, and I'm not harming anything that I've previously done, and not sort of using the heel of my hand and then ending up moving a blackberry around or whatever. So that's what it is. I think in some countries they call it crystal paper, and if you use pastel mat, it's what's in those interleaves in between your sheets of paper. But you can get it, most art stores do it, and it is really a great thing to have in amongst your collection of things, because that's basically what I use to store my finished paintings when they're not in a frame. Pop a little bit of glassine over the top, and they're just stacked in a box that way, and everything stays lovely and as it should be. So glassine paper really is well worth getting some if you don't already have it. But just wanted to pop in and let you know what that was for those of you that haven't seen it before. And obviously also to let you know that really I've got the painting to a similar stage everywhere else. So now I'm coming back down or back up and really refining that little bit more. Again, looking a little bit closer and refining a little bit more. And as I say, really, ideally, I'd like to work from the top to the bottom. I'm sure I'll nip up to the top at some point. But ideally, I want to get the level of detail at the top and then sort of work my way down the painting. All right, then. So I'll pop that music back on and I'll see you in a mo. So slowing the video back down again just a little bit so you can see again, now adding more detail to these front berries. And as I say, up to you how much detail you want to put, but I feel I want to get a little bit more, bring them forward in the painting a little bit more. So I'm going backwards and forwards, again, refining, looking at those shapes a little bit closer. Every time you go back to your painting, you see a little bit more. You know, when you do take a break, you see a little bit more and you think, oh, right, oh yeah, okay, that's a little bit too far over. That's a little bit, you know, observation is the key. For realistic painting, observation is absolutely the key. Really look at your reference photo. If you are going for that realistic look, if you're going for a much more painterly look at your reference photo for those basic lights and darks and the changes of colour and things. But as I say, the more realistic you want it, you're breaking it down further. You're adding a little bit more colour. You're adding all those sort of nuances, and you know, really just working your way through the painting. And it's layer. And as you see, what I do is I kind of get it all to the same level, and then I'll decide whether I need to go back for another round, you know. And at some point I think, oh, okay, no, that's it, stop. And it's always that difficult thing to balance, you know. When is enough? When have you said what you wanted to say, you know? And that's always a difficult one to judge. You know, it's a very personal thing. Some people keep their paintings very, very loose and very expressionistic, and they're wonderful, you know, they really are. Other people do really hyper realism. I'm somewhere in between, you know. I'm sort of like, I do like things to look like they're supposed to, if you know what I mean. I do look like a tree to look like a tree. I do want these to look like berries, not just blobs of colour. So I do err towards the realistic side, but certainly not hyper realistic. And I think that hyper realism, if you're working in pastels, really you need to work large. Or use pastel pencils to help you get that level of detail. It would be very, very difficult to be hyper realistic on something like this at 6 inches by 6 inches with those pastels. You would take a long time doing it, and hyperrealism does take a long time. Basically, the more realistic you get, the longer your painting is going to take you to do. If in general, I tend to spend between about, I don't know, in general, 5 to 10 hours on most paintings, but if I'm doing portraits and things, they can easily go 30 hours plus, and especially if I'm doing a commission and I need it to look like the dog or the person or whatever, that will take me a long time in building that up, and that's it. It's up to you. However, we wouldn't get, I'd probably only get, if I did hyperrealism, I'd probably only get, I don't know, 2 videos done a year with the time I take anyway. So I thought that best not to go down that route. So hopefully I'm finding a happy balance between how I feel comfortable and what we can achieve in a reasonable length of time. But again, up to you. You can take half an hour doing a painting. I've seen some artists do it. I think, oh my gosh, I am in awe. But for me, I like to take it that little bit further. But horses for courses and all that. All right then. So literally, I'm just going round now and refining that little bit more each time I go round. And at some point soon, I shall say I've done for now. All right then. So I'll pop the music back on and I'll see you in a moment. So I'm getting to the point now. I'm thinking, okay, time to stop playing on this one for the time being. I'm pretty happy with it overall. I might pop back and do a few little tweaks here and there, but literally only a little bit because, I'm asking myself, does it give me the feeling I wanted it to? And yes, it does. Does it feel like blackberries? Yes, it does. And do I like the colours? And do I like the feeling of the little painting? And yes, I do. Now, as I say, I could go on playing for hours. And if I wanted to refine this more, I would now come in at this stage and use some pastel pencils to help me refine. I've got all of those colours down there from the rich, soft pastels. That's absolutely fine. But to get those absolute finest details, if I wanted to get that in, I would use pastel pencils at this stage. But I didn't want to do that for this demo. I just wanted to try this paper out, really. And see how much it would take. Now I could strengthen all those colours even more with soft pastels. I've certainly got plenty enough tooth, and I've certainly put quite a few layers down. So I'm pretty impressed with the paper actually, and it's been fun working on the black paper. So yes, the new Canson Mi Tentes Velvet gets the thumbs up from me. It's going to be part of my little stable because they've got they have got this lovely jet black and they've got some interesting colours as well. So very happy with it. And as I say, if you wanted to do a lot of detail, and you wanted to do even more layers, I've certainly got enough tooth to be able to do that on this. I'm not sliding around at all at the moment, which is great. So thumbs up for the Canson Mi Tentes. Well done, gentlemen and ladies, for producing that. Really happy with that. It's nice to be able to have a few different papers to choose from, just in case they're out of stock or whatever. You don't get wedded to just one paper. So really enjoyed playing on this. All right then, so I hope you've enjoyed this Scrumptious Fruits coming together, and I hope you're going to have a go. It's really fun creating a bokeh background, all those soft, I'm a lover of circles and soft edges and gentle things. That's me all over. So I'm really in a happy place doing this. And as I say, you can take it on further. You could stop some time ago. But hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've learned something along the way, and I hope you have a go. It's good fun to do. It really is. And always remember, you can do any size. Just because you see me do a 6x6 doesn't mean you need to. So, you can take your time and do a larger painting. It would be much easier to get in those details. But if you like the challenge and, you want to create a small painting, for me, this felt like a small painting. I didn't want to do this one large. And even though the details in there, and it took some time going backwards and forwards. But pretty happy with the end result. All right then, so I wish you a lovely few days and happy painting.